What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wealth of the Futures channel. Today is Sunday, June the 10th. It is a beautiful morning. I hope everybody's having a fabulous day. Congrats to all the holders in the community of EOS. It looks like yet we survived another day. And in fact, looks like officially we've reached consensus, at least with the block producers, to launch this rocket. So I wanted to, though, discuss, the roles, the different people within the community. I mean, it's one thing we have, obviously, the block producers that serve an integral role to the EOS ecosystem, but it also is you guys. It's also folks like me, and really helping each other find our roles within this community, because it's a lot more than, producing blocks. We're going to need to develop different distributed applications. We're going to be the ones that potentially market EOS across the entire globe. So just because you're not a coder, and I think I've mentioned this before, just because you're not a coder doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a role for you within EOS. Quite the contrary. So I just wanted to reiterate that to everybody, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in to this channel. So if you like this content, consider hitting that like button. What I'm going to start with today is actually just a rundown of some of the exciting dApps that we anticipate at least receiving on EOS, or potentially very soon. So some of them haven't actually dropped their tokens to the holders, but I have a couple neat resources for everybody to follow in terms of finding out a little bit more about these applications and what they're going to do, hopefully for the community. So thanks for tuning in. I see we have one person that says, hello, what's going on? How are you doing? Please share this link as well. So what I have up is EOS drops, a collection of EOS.io projects, basically airdropping on EOS holders. You can find this particular link at www.eosdrops.io. So this is intended to just give a rundown of some of the apps we can expect. So first on the list, we have Carmel. For those that don't know, Carmel's probably one of the exciting apps I'm waiting for, because I'm looking to better understand how I can develop applications on EOS. And Carmel's one of those platforms that's going to enable people to learn, different aspects of software development. And I'm not coming in, totally new to building software, but there's a lot that I don't know because I don't do this on a daily basis. So part of the intent of this channel is to take you guys along in my own journey in understanding blockchain technologies. And it doesn't just mean, understanding the token economics or understanding EOS itself, but it means actually creating different applications on EOS with other teams and hopefully pitching that to the community and getting buy-in. Because that's what this is all about. It's all about us, helping each other, right? Sharing and exchanging value. So Carmel basically allows and enables this through a platform in which they give maybe different challenges to the users, and along the way, as you use Carmel, you'll be able to document your progression technically on the blockchain, and also potentially network with others to track your growth and progress. So Carmel's one of those neat projects. I haven't actually got Carmel tokens because I didn't register for it. I did reach out to the team to see if they'd help maybe secure basically a batch of these, maybe for the local community, or maybe there's some kind of a deal. So I'm still finding a little bit more finding more information about Carmel, just because we have also a local community here in Phoenix that we're hoping to build an incubator with, and a big part of that is going to be essentially the progression and understanding of the technology. So we'll need different skill sets. One of those being developers. So that should be pretty cool. So we got Carmel on deck. And you know what, before I go on, I wanted to also say that one of the cool things that I saw, for those that may have not seen it, on Twitter, they had an announcement EOS did on their global hackathon. So I know a lot of you guys heard of the global community hackathon that went on, and there were some prizes given out. Well, EOS, or I guess you could say Block 1, not sure technically which one is essentially affiliated with the Hong Kong contest, but they posted a video on their Twitter link. And that video had, I think, 10 different teams that were finalists in this hackathon within Hong Kong. And there were some really exciting projects beyond what we're talking about here. For those that haven't seen that video, I think it's an hour and 20 minutes long. I'd encourage you to check it out. You can find it again on the official EOSIO Twitter feed. But they had a whole summary of pitches, basically 3-minute pitches for these teams that put together their project. I think they only had like 3 days to actually put this together. So that was, you know, to me pretty amazing that they were able to do something like that in that short of time. If you look at the quality of the projects and just the demos they were showing, it's pretty impressive. You know, I don't know if I've seen something like that. I mean, I've seen, you know, people develop applications on Ethereum, for example, but most of the time we've seen more promises than delivery. And I think what's exciting about what I saw at that hackathon was more demonstration of the technology actually working, having an actual working product. So that's something that, you know, here in Phoenix, I hope to build, I hope to contribute to in terms of building that ecosystem where we have the infrastructure, knowledge, and, you know, resources on hand so that we can take projects from inception to actual demonstration within a short period of time. Because that's going to be the key here, is just throwing out many of these projects, and in fact, some of them may not even succeed. But the whole point is, as we go along on this journey, to work together, grow, and become more knowledgeable and more valuable to each other, right? So I encourage you guys to check it out. In fact, I have some of the news on that topic on the bottom of my my portal here, congratulating those teams. So I think it was ID Pass as the first runner-up, and then Block Player as the second. There were some really interesting demos on, for example, a new hardware wallet. So that was really cool. How's it's me, Boss Lady, doing? I always see you on a lot of the you know, other YouTube channels posting great content. I know on Crypto Zero's channel as well. So it's great to see you joined also this channel. It's just starting out, obviously, but we're getting there in terms of getting organized and just having more time to talk about these technologies, because that's what really excites me, and I'm sure it really excites you. I'm all about just, you know, freedom, liberty, and having the ability to enable others to create, you know, opportunities. I think that's what is so attractive in terms of what EOS or something like it can do. The fact that, you know, you have an idea and no longer do you have to go to a venture capitalist and beg for money. Now you have the ability to go to the community and basically, even without having official, you know, venture capitalists back you, you can just distribute all your tokens to the entire globe and come up and work with teams to build the code, release it, and have the community market it, have them reward you for the work. I mean, it's just such a phenomenal, it's just such a phenomenal concept that, you know, to me, it's just amazing, you know, when you start to think of it that way, what is potentially possible here and what we are actually on the cusp of seeing in terms of global adoption. And I do think that in terms of, you know, what it's going to take partially is, you know, something like a biometric hardware wallet. Because when I think about someone like my family or my mom or even myself, you know, what is still a hindrance, I think, and this is just my opinion, to cryptocurrencies is the fact that, you know, people have concerns with losing their tokens. Let's face it. People have concerns with on-ramping into cryptocurrency. I mean, just look at EOS. You know, let's think about it a little bit. EOS, you know, first of all, there was no guarantee of even getting this far in terms of having a launch, having qualified block producers run this massive global machine. And then you factor in the fact that it's about 20 steps if anybody actually did it. And I'm not saying, I'm not advocating, people who did it or didn't do it are bad or it's illegal, but I'm just saying that this wasn't something that was offered in the United States. And moreover, most people within crypto in general are very skeptical of it, let alone the general public. I mean, if you told the general public that you were going to invest, any amount of money in a project like this and, support it just because of the technology and the fact that you think that it had the potential to do something amazing, they would have asked you to probably have your head examined, okay? Like, that's the level, like, that's really the magnitude of risk or critique, I think, that most of the institutions, for example, looked at EOS as, and there were some minorities maybe in that space. I mean, you can look at someone like a Mike Novogratz, right? A Mike Novogratz who I think invested or partnered with EOS for, not EOS, Block.one for $325 million, I believe, to start this venture capital fund. But there's a lot of others that probably just yawned at this very notion because they don't actually get it. The very fact that how it's going to change the legacy systems. I was in a Starbucks yesterday, and I was actually studying a book, and I was actually going to go grab the book because it's such an amazing book. And maybe I'll do that. Let me come right back and show you guys what I've been up to. So I've been actually reading this book. It's Actionable Gamification. It's by author here, Yukai Kao. And the reason why I've been reading this book is to better understand how to build these new systems, these new games. And that's how I think about it. That's how I've been learning through, studying this technology for many years, through the likes of people like Fuzzy, who many of you guys know on EOS Talk.io. Really what we're building here is better games. And it was interesting because I was at a Starbucks yesterday studying, this technology and reading this book and actually coming up with how we build, how we could build, for example, community tokens to get people involved in the space, to basically onboard them, because that's really what it's going to take. And people, I was sitting next to people and they were looking at me and they asked, like, what am I studying? Because they saw this book and they're like, well, what is it you're doing? And so kind of explained what this whole project is about and, my interest in it. And they were blown away. And, the more I talk about it, the more I think about what is possible. Even in that Starbucks, even in that space yesterday, I got to thinking, like, wow, this, I mean, it's the point now, and if you think of it, this behavior design that is even shown on the cover, it actually does give some thoughts to where we are now in space. Because, right now, I think there are two types of people in crypto. And I mean, obviously, there's a blend as well. You have some people that are exclusively in crypto just to make money. And in fact, that, in its own right is, I guess, where the space is just inherently, because that's what people deem as the opportunity. But I think as time goes by, what you're going to start to see is a transition. You're still going to have, opportunities to obviously build wealth and make money. But I think what is going to start happening when you start to see these applications come online, these hardware wallets with biometric IDs that enable people that traditionally may have not gotten involved in the space because of concerns with security, once they start to get involved, and once you start to see institutions start to play in space, it's going to become more of a risk for people that choose not to play in the space. What I mean by that is, and I mentioned it in the past, like Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? And so there was a time, if you guys remember, in like the 90s, where, the internet came and, DVDs came and, Blockbuster still had their brick and mortar business model. And eventually, these new players came in the space that offered CDs and DVDs to share content, right? And so that was really the first move we saw against Blockbuster. And it wasn't actually the internet model that even took them out. It was this other model that moved brick and mortar concepts, which was Blockbuster, offering videos in different franchises or stores all across the U.S. I mean, there was a time I remember, and I mean, I'm not that old, guys, but I mean, I remember even as a kid that Blockbuster was ubiquitous. Blockbuster was everywhere in a lot of United States communities and very popular. And a lot of people thought that they were invincible to competition, like meaning they would always be there. They always be the number one, place you go and get your movies. And out of almost seemingly nowhere, from the perspective of Blockbuster, came a company like Netflix that really championed and mastered this notion of, I guess, having remote virtual presence, right, in all these communities through the power of the internet and through the technology of a DVD and a CD. So they started just having this mail-in concept where you could order your videos and content, and people would get the content that way. And then eventually, as the internet matured, they saw an opportunity to go into the video playing space, and the rest is history. Whereas Blockbuster now, they're nowhere to be found. And so what I'm saying is, if you imagine that same thing that happened to Blockbuster, but now apply it to everything, potentially. If you apply it to Starbucks as an organization, and I'm not, bagging on Starbucks like exclusively. I'm just using them as an example so you guys understand. But if you look at a company like Starbucks and the fact that they have so many franchises, so many coffee shops, but they have misalignment of incentives for their workers and for people who contribute value there. That is, in itself, this model is a threat even to a company like Starbucks, I'd argue. Entrepreneurs like myself, maybe an entrepreneur like myself, will see a technology like EOS.io and figure out a token economic model that works better for the workers, that works better for the patrons that go there. Think of it. I mean, if you have certain personalities maybe in your coffee shop, that alone is adding value. Interesting conversations add value. People who offer superb service and have a retention of people coming back to the store, that adds value. You can think of it. Musicians that play potentially have added value to your store, to your franchise. So what you're going to see is a more holistic, I think, design perspective and any business that is going to be launched. And that's very different than today, because today businesses are launched from a functional design perspective, meaning they only do one thing, which is, they get the money and they give it to the shareholders. But what happens when you blend all the roles together? You blend the role of a customer with the role of an employee, with the role of a shareholder, which is potentially just a VC. But again, the VCs could be everybody. So what happens when you have that blur potentially of the roles? That's really what we're seeing. And so in talking to people just on the street, and I meet a couple people every day, and I talk to them about EOS.io, they're blown away. And these aren't people with technical backgrounds, but they get it. After a few minutes of talking to them, they totally get this, and they're interested in learning more. So it's only a matter of time. So like I said, what are the barriers to entry, in my opinion, is, the barriers would be, for example, the on-ramp of cryptocurrencies for average people. And when I say on-ramping of cryptocurrencies, what I mean is the fact that you have to go through Coinbase right now, for example. The fact that there's regulations in our communities that prevent the use of cryptocurrencies. That's a problem, but it's also an opportunity. And so what I'm urging people to do who hold EOS or who hold other cryptocurrencies, this isn't specific to EOS. It goes for everything, really. But what we need to start doing is we need to start educating ourselves well enough to explain this technology, to have demos, to influence our local governments to take a stand, have some courage, and encourage the adoption of cryptocurrencies in their community. And the reason is as follows. This is a global phenomenon. It's not, isolated to one state or one city or one small area. This is a global phenomenon. And really what's happening right now is a competition between different areas of the world to see which countries are going to be more adoptive and more aligned with encouraging citizens to use this technology. Those that don't, unfortunately, are going to see a brain drain. They're going to see a brain drain. They're going to see a loss of productivity. They're going to see issues competing with these other technologies that are, basically ramping up as we speak. So it becomes not only a risk to individuals who choose not to educate themselves on the different use cases and the technologies and what's possible, but it becomes a risk to governments themselves in the sense that if they don't get on board early enough, they lose out on the potential opportunities to become hubs of this movement. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Other things that I'm actually interested in is, what are some of the things you guys are doing in your communities? I'd like to learn, best practices on how to share this technology. We've been here in Phoenix developing templates for explaining how token economics work. Again, not specific to EOS.io. This could apply to basically anything. Anything that comes along that's better, you can take the same things you're learning now with Ethereum or EOS and move them into the new space. So, but again, really exciting stuff, guys. What we have right now, I'll go back to what I was explaining before I went on a rant, is all these airdrops. And airdrops are really neat because what is going to, let me just do one thing here, guys. That's probably better for you. Okay, so what we have right here, guys, is a rundown of all the projects. I've talked about Carmel and why that's going to be a really integral project to this whole ecosystem because it's going to allow us to onboard more developers, people with the ideas maybe, but maybe they don't have the skills or they're not a seasoned software developer. We're going to need something like that. So I plan to actually trial that out with a team here, or at least with myself, to get a hold of some of those tokens. This is not an endorsement for Carmel, but I think it's a pretty neat project in the sense if you're here to learn, if you're here to actually build apps, take a look at Carmel. Carmel.io is the website for that. Putting together some unique exercises for the community to basically bring them up to speed on what they need to learn to build applications. Then we have a project called Chance, and Chance is a trading platform of blockchain assets focused specifically on projects built on EOS. And this is going to be important because as we start to scale in terms of on-ramping all these developers and people with ideas, you're going to see like thousands of projects. You're going to see like, 5,000 projects, 10,000 projects potentially, okay? Because this is a global phenomenon. And it's going to just ramp up even more crazy than where it is right now. And so when you have that, it's going to become, I think, in my opinion, very challenging for most centralized exchanges to bring on board those projects. So what you need is you really need a DEX, a decentralized exchange, to allow that. So Chance is going to be one of those, potentially one of those portals that allows for that. Now, I do think that, in the beginning with all this stuff, and this is just my own opinions, I'd encourage you to do your own research, but one of the things that I'm cautious about right now, and I may take a little bit of heat from this from a lot of people, is doing anything at this point. I'm not really interested in putting, anybody's tokens at risk. So what I'm encouraging you guys to do, if you guys have an interest in trying anything out, and this, by the way, is going to be a little controversial, but even like the voting, for example, I would encourage you to, if you really want to do something, create an entirely separate hardware wallet, put a very small amount of, EOS in there or whatever you want to do, and try it out. Because the risk is, potentially, if you're not careful or if it's something new for you, chances are when you're doing something that's new and you haven't done it before, I mean, just think back to when you learned about cryptocurrencies and you were dealing with MyEther Wallet, when you're dealing with your new Trezor, maybe, when you're dealing with and just understanding all the different nuances of it and finding trusted groups and entities who provided these platforms. There's always a risk there, guys, that potentially these platforms, they may be built with the right intentions, the best intentions, but maybe, there's, of course, bugs in the code. And, there's not a whole lot that we can do about that. I mean, you just have to find them. And so I'm not here to scare you guys, but what I'm trying to say is it's important to, exercise some due diligence on what it is that you're basically interacting with. Because if it turns out that, there's a critical bug in that code and you exposed your private keys to it, there are some things that, yes, will be integrated into EOS, but why risk it at this point? What do you have to truly gain? I mean, there is nothing. We're in the beginning. We're in the first inning here. So my own advice to you guys is to do nothing or to try out the things with a separate hardware wallet that is not associated with your main holdings, because you're really putting a lot at risk if you do that. And, a lot of the stuff is in beta mode. So it's going to be very important to just maintain patience and help people, improve their systems, but exercise caution until we know a lot more. That would be my recommendation to everybody. Okay, so we also have, I'm not going to go over all of them, guys. Again, you can go to eosdrops.io, but EOS DAC is another interesting one. This is the Decentralized Autonomous Community as a BP. So they're basically, they dropped 75% of the EOS DAC tokens, to the community. And the idea is to share the rewards with the community. Now, there's another, form of discussion here to say that whether or not it is feasible or viable for an organization to do this. We don't know, how fast EOS as a platform will scale, what types of requirements the BPs might need, in terms of reinvesting their money. So there's always a risk here about that, if that'll stay true to what they're saying. And I haven't read all the details about it, but it is an interesting, concept, and I do support these guys. It's just without knowing more about the implementation strategy and actually seeing it, a lot of this is just, face value, if you will, what they intend to do. And I can tell you that, in being a veteran in the space for a long time in Ethereum, that's what is going to be of interest to someone like me, because what I saw in Ethereum, and this is just not to, throw eggs at anybody, but, what we see, what I saw with Ethereum is initially there were a lot of these projects, and I was following Ethereum, back in 2016. There were a lot of projects that built white papers and made a lot of promises, and, we're 2 years now out, and still these folks don't even have a product. Now, I think that'll be less of an issue on EOS. We're already seeing a lot of teams with products and demos, but I mean, you've seen a huge lag in Ethereum to the extent that, I can't really name too many projects on Ethereum that actually have products themselves. They are just basically waiting for a lot of scaling issues to be worked through on the network, but even beyond that, a lot of them don't understand token economics, or their initial white papers and concepts are flawed, like from a SEC standpoint or from a security standpoint. It's just there's a lot of legal issues. They've had to change their promises, which in itself is a little odd if you think about it from a legal standpoint, because I don't know what gives them the right to do that without having governance. So with a lot of these projects, what I'm actually looking to see, and it goes back to Thomas Cox's perspective, is governance on what tells the community how things are going to be managed, right? Because you're going to have issues along the way. No project is going to know all the details in the beginning. You're going to have to, I guess, take it day by day, and as you learn and as you grow and as you become more knowledgeable on what it is you're doing, I mean, things are going to change. But it's likely that it would be a good idea to have some type of governance structure to help regulate that, because otherwise, you basically have a dictatorship or a centralized system in which people are making decisions that deviate significantly from the original promises or the original intent, I would say. That's the word I was looking for, the original intent of the project. And that is a problem. And so Ethereum has seen a lot of that, unfortunately. And I don't want to name any specific projects because I'm not going to put them out like that. But they know who they are. And I'm surprised, in fact, there hasn't been more of an uproar about it. So, again, guys, that to me is pretty important to have. And I haven't seen as much emphasis on that, but I expect as we go along here, governance is going to play a very important role in the EOS ecosystem, not only for the main chain, but also for the apps themselves. So Everpedia is obviously another exciting project. It's the next generation Wikipedia, if you will, that is going to be built on EOS, and so that's another airdrop. And for those that don't know, for the most part, airdrops are projects and tokens that are distributed to the EOS token holders. Okay, so if you have if you hold those keys for your EOS tokens, you will get these airdrops. Now, not all of them are automatic airdrops. Like, for example, some of them may require registration. Again, my own perspective on things is I don't believe in having to register anything or give away any public or any private keys. Don't never do that, in fact. So if anybody's asking you for this, even if they're on a website, don't do it. That's really the takeaway here, is don't interact with those things. It's way too early in the game to, speculate on anything here. And until further notice, you should really treat anything you see here with scrutiny. That's the best position to be in. Other projects, Higher Vibes is another neat one. That's with Kyle from the Awakenment. His team, I think, is putting together that project. And that's about introducing outsourcing. Basically, it's an outsourcing jobs app. So it's going to enable you guys to find opportunities and even get rewards for private referrals. So I really like that idea. I think it's going to be awesome. We'll have to see again how the application is unveiled and the actual working product. But from just an idea perspective, it seems pretty cool. And then you have HorsePay, which is a global payroll solutions platform. So that's going to allow companies to exchange data with international payroll vendors. Again, it sounds like you need something like that, right? If we want to get this technology onboarded to general public, you're going to need these on-ramps and off-ramps. And then we have the EOSIO network. It's the first participatory blockchain-driven healthcare network built on decentralizing access to medical data. And we all know, the issues with our healthcare system. We all know the issues with Facebook. I think healthcare and social networking are, really the big targets right now for something like EOS to go after. I think that, something like healthcare resonates with a lot of people, especially in the United States. The fact that we don't have competitive systems and everything is just so controlled and centralized and orchestrated by, entities that try to influence other organizations, right, with pricing structures and deals. I think something like this is just the beginning with medical data, but I see this going into even the way, insurance is offered potentially on the blockchain. Now, we haven't seen a robust platform that enables us to do this, but I think EOS might enable us to finally achieve at least a first example of that, right? So really neat stuff there. And then we have Scatter. I mean, there's a couple others here, but Scatter is another one that is going to be, I think, an integral role. Now, obviously, it's in beta phase right now. There may be some bugs and issues, and that's to be expected. But I think what NS James is doing is pretty cool. You could think of this as almost like a MetaMask for EOS, but so much more than that, because it's going to enable you to have an identity basically on this chain, and also, enable developers to potentially plug into Scatter as a way to onboard and offboard users. So I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about that. Again, I know there's a lot of, just like with any of these apps, there's going to be things they need to work through. So again, my own recommendation for any of these, it's just my opinion. This is not Block.one or EOS as a community. I don't speak for them. I speak for myself. And that's why I love maintaining independence, because I like to have my own opinion about things. But my own opinion is, if you want to mess with these in any deep detail, I would say create a separate wallet, have a very small amount in there, and just be ready and willing to lose it if you want to do that. If that's your thing. Because right now, all this is, the fundamental foundation of what we're building. This is like 1997 or 1996 of this whole space. Okay, this is just the very, very beginning. So there's no real race to this. This is a multi-year investment in terms of your knowledge, not necessarily your. Don't confuse, investing knowledge with investing and gaining a lot of money. It's not to say that that won't happen, but you got to decouple the two and figure out, maybe translating the knowledge into wealth. And that's what EOS.io Phoenix is about. Our project is about. It's about enabling people to understand this technology better, understand how they can fit into the ecosystem, because there's many different roles. And if you guys are interested in that, I'd encourage you guys to check out my previous video on this matter, where I'm discussing that. So thank you so much for checking out this my YouTube channel again. If you like this content, consider hitting that like button. Consider joining these discussions, because I'll be having them at least once a week, I hope. Maybe even more than that. But I have also some other websites that may be of interest to you. So the first one I mentioned for the airdrops is EOSdrops.io. The second one that I'd recommend for airdrops is airdrops for EOS.com. Now, this isn't an endorsement on any of these projects. It's just showing you guys where you can get the information for projects built on EOS. So some of the ones I already mentioned on the previous slide are also listed here, but I think you'll also find even more. So I would say check out both these sites and see what works for you. There's a lot of projects, in fact, quite a few already. And again, this is only the beginning. Imagine when we learn, as developers or as aspiring developers, we start to learn more. I mean, you're just going to see this list grow like crazy. I mean, it's going to be insane. Here's the orspay.io, their website. Looks like their airdrop is taking place on June the 30th. And part of the challenge, I think, with a lot of these projects, in my opinion, is, or a project that wants to do airdrops, is going to be the fact that on Ethereum right now, Ethereum's network is getting clogged again. So as Ethereum's network gets clogged, it requires people who want to do airdrops on the community to spend more money, and quite a bit of money to get everybody, right? Like, I think there's like 330,000 addresses of EOS holders. So all 330,000 of those people we would need to send, we would need to spend some Ether to send them addresses, send them tokens. Whereas on EOS, I think it'll be much more scalable to do something like that. So I think what you might be seeing is people holding off on that and actually choosing to do their airdrops on the EOS platform versus doing it on the Ethereum platform, because there's different economics that are involved. And it just, if you understand the economics of it, the pricing structure and how Ethereum works versus EOS, it makes more sense to just do it on EOS. So we have that, in fact, to work through. So, with that said, I guess, what are my thoughts on what's going to happen in the space, in the next 6 months? If I had to just, if this was off the cuff, and obviously if it is, because it's just my opinion, so I'm not telling you guys to go out and do anything, like, don't quit your job, don't do silly stuff, okay? Just, you got to think smart here. But if I had to guess where things are going, in this space, I would say this. And I started alluding to this, but then I just didn't complete my thought. So what I think is going on right now is there's a lot of people who are veterans in the space who have followed Ethereum and EOS and Bitcoin, and they are well versed in it. But that's a very, very small percent of the global population. I think in the next 6 to 12 months, I think you're going to see an absolute explosion of adoption of cryptocurrencies. And I think the catalyst for that is not going to be what people expect it to be. And I guess I should explain. I think that what is going to be the catalyst for cryptocurrencies in terms of just, and I'll separate the two. In terms of price, what's going to be the catalyst is going to be not more general people coming in space. But I think what you're going to see, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you look at it, but I think what you're going to actually see is you're going to see custodianship services being offered for cryptocurrencies. And so what I mean by custodianship offerings for cryptocurrencies is something like a Bank of America or a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs coming in and saying they offer services for clients, and I think at first it'll be high net worth clients, but they're basically going to offer services where they are the custodians of these digital assets, if you will, okay? And so they'll offer them kind of like how a bank works today for cash, right? You go to a bank, you have a card, you have like your Visa card or whatever, right? At Bank of America, and you go to the ATM and it allows you to get cash. Well, in the future, you could see these banks, because they'll have no other purpose in society, maybe they'll act as, some kind of a trusted custodian for people who may not necessarily vibe with the whole total independent bank, which is like Bitcoin and a lot of these other cryptocurrencies, right? We're basically our own banks, but not everybody can handle that level of responsibility or wants to, right? Most people I talk to who hear about this, they're really excited about it, but the thing that, is still a little bit uncertain for them is how, as individuals, what level of responsibility they have to maintain the money they work hard for. Maybe they don't want to have all that responsibility. Now, it may come as a disappointment to many of you guys who are watching this video, but that's the truth, okay? Whether I like it or not, I have to face the facts that not everybody, wants to embrace that level of responsibility on their own money. So what you're going to actually end up having, in my opinion, is these institutions do perform that service. And I think as we speak right now, there are products being developed to enable this to happen. And when that happens, that's going to bring a new flood of adopters into the space, more liquidity into the space. Think about this. Vanguard has, over $4 trillion in assets. Vanguard is one of the largest, firms out there, financial service firms that, for example, many of you guys have your 401ks tied to, right? Your retirement funds. There's a lot of state and sovereign entities that manage funds, manage their own wealth funds. Many of them do not have at this point any exposure to cryptocurrencies. Not because they don't want to, but the fact of the matter is, the trust is one issue, right? The viability of the technology is another issue. A lot of them don't see it. They don't have cryptocurrency specialists on their floor, on their firm. It doesn't exist today. Just like if you want to go learn about token economics, you're not going to be able to go find a book on it. You have to go and listen to folks like Uncle Fuzzy, or go to meetups, talk with others, research, listen to guys like Dan Larimer. That's how you get the information. It doesn't exist. You can't take a class on it, right? So that's what's different. That's what makes this technology, I guess, phenomena, or I don't know what you want to call it. Bubble is another term that will happen eventually, but that's what's going to make this very different, in that it's right now it's still driven on, digging for the information and understanding what this is going to do. And if you listen to people on CNBC, you can clearly see they have no clue what's going on in the space. I mean, they're recommending stuff like Ripple, which does nothing for the general people. There's no incentive for you as a Ripple holder to do anything for Ripple other than shill it. You know what I mean? Now that's very different than other types of technologies, right? That you guys could build. I mean, you could build your own empire with other people, right? Your own local community. You could build your own fashion company on the blockchain with other people, and exchange with people like myself who are going to support it, because I dig stuff like that, right? You can build your own goods and basically have your own voice in the ecosystem. Where else can you do that? You can go to Bank of America and ask them for a loan. I mean, they're going to laugh at you, right? But you go to your community and you have reputation in it, and you've put in the time, and you understand the tech, and people around you know that, you're more likely to get support for that idea. And I think that's what's very different today than what you've seen in the past. But unfortunately, again, the catalyst for the average people is going to be when they see someone like Bank of America make an announcement that now they're offering products for average people to get exposure to cryptocurrencies. That is going to be the day, guys, where you're going to be blown away, because you're going to know that you watched it here on this channel, EOS Phoenix. When you see that, you're going to know that most average people are going to start legitimizing something like an EOS, and that hasn't really happened yet. If you told someone that you put in, however many you put in, even if you put in $5, they would laugh at you. They would say that you're, I don't know what they would actually say, but you can imagine. And so most people work still on this notion of reputation from institutional perspectives. They need to see some, large organization make an announcement before they consider something as legitimate, right? So when you see a company like Vanguard, okay, who has $4 trillion, decide to, expose their clients, 5%, if you will, maybe to start with, into cryptocurrencies, you know that this is starting, okay? If you do the math, $4 trillion of assets, 5%, that's $200 billion just in that organization alone. That's not the whole global, that doesn't include all the sovereigns, all the countries themselves that have funds, all the state-run organizations, Arizona being one of them. You have the CalPERS folks, you have people in New York, I mean, all across the United States, and really no different than other organizations, right? Those people have trillions of dollars in assets. Do you think they're going to sit on their hands and just hope that the legacy systems somehow can compete with these? No, they're not going to do that. They're going to need to act fast, because it goes back to what I mentioned earlier in this book. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but on the bottom there's the avoidance, and there's the scarcity, and there's the unpredictability. So what you're going to actually start to see is people are not going to be driven in this space because they want a sense of meaning, or they want to, having a sense of accomplishment. They're going to be driven in space, a lot of those legacy institution systems, because they need to. Because if they don't, they risk more harm to the 401k, customers they have, right? They'll be really screwed. If this technology starts to go where we think it's going to go, all those people are going to be impacted by the inaction of those managers. So even though while they may not want to have exposure to it, it's sort of like a game theory mechanism where they're going to need to have a small percentage at least, right, to hedge their risk. Because there's going to be a risk that if they don't do anything, they're really going to be in trouble. But if they do maybe 5%, right, if all the global sovereigns decide to do 5% of exposure into cryptocurrencies with the custodianship services built in, and you start to do the math there, you easily have, I would argue, $1 to $2 trillion, right, as a global market. And that's just saying this isn't legitimate technology yet, but I just want to hedge my bets. What's going to happen when we start to take Uber out? Because that's what's going to happen, okay? Guys like myself are going to help market solutions that empower people, that give them back ownership in different platforms, okay? And we can build that. We can build a decentralized Uber. We can totally do it. We have the marketing power here in Phoenix. We have marketing power. I know a lot of you guys are in cities and places that have Uber and Lyft, and we can totally take these guys out. Not in a bad way, but kind of like, crypto pirates that we just build better technology and we don't need to rob anybody. We rob them with our intellect because we have better solutions that incentivize people to work with us versus centralized vampire squid, platforms, right? That take away power from people, take away and don't honor the creation that the people make, right? So the same with Starbucks. I mean, there's nothing stopping some crypto pirates from opening up a coffee chain and having, an app that rewards people for different things in that community. That in its own right is a community. So all these things that you guys interact with today, including this video, really what it is, in my opinion, is it's really just a game. And really all we need to do, guys, is think about how we build better games. And there's different kinds of personalities out there. And that's another thing I'm also studying is, how do you appeal to the different personalities? Because there's some people that are more, they resonate more with just doing something for a meaning or for a purpose or a calling. There's other people that do it because they want to collect a bunch of tokens and, have a bunch of wealth, and that's their main source. That's what resonates for them. There's other people that it's more like a participating in the evolution of the doing something itself has a feedback mechanism for them that enables them and wants and forces them to want to come back, right, in a sense. So there's just different things that motivate people, and I think that's what makes this whole experiment so interesting. But I would encourage you guys to, get out there, get involved in your communities. Start something like EOS Phoenix in your city. There's nothing stopping you guys. You guys are the superstars of this platform. Let's not get it twisted. Let's not, think that, it's the BPs, because it's not going to be. It's going to be people like you who are listening to this video, who are knowledgeable, okay? I know, crypto fees and It's Me, Boss Lady. You guys have, tremendous knowledge. You guys have been here, since almost day one, right? You guys have been here for years. I've watched you guys grow in terms of how much intellect you have, in terms of how much influence you have. Do you guys know how much knowledge you guys have? I mean, I would encourage you guys to do this. I would encourage you guys to go out one day, and if you haven't done this, go out and just go talk to people and go explain to them this technology, and just see how blown away they are at what you're explaining and what is possible. What it is we're doing, and that alone should tell you that you have a lot of value, and how many other people could benefit from that who are not aware of this. Because, a lot of people don't have, a lot of people just don't have the time, to go through all this stuff. And a lot of people don't want to, and they don't need to, right? There's other people here that hopefully can help out and can share their knowledge. Eventually, we'll have solutions to quickly onboard different apps. And for those that haven't heard what I said earlier, EOS.io actually announced that they rewarded their hackathon finalists, right? They basically announced the finalists of that contest. And if you look at those innovations that were done in 3 days, wow, that's all I got to say. I mean, I was blown away. I mean, I'm like, where do I sign up? How do I learn this? This is just incredible stuff. And imagine when we get guys like Crypto Fees. Imagine when we get It's Me Boss Lady, cranking out ideas, because I know you guys got them. This is going to be unstoppable, and it's not only going to, enable you to, have a lot of wealth and value if that's your thing. I mean, great. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's going to enable you to like be a part of history, to have a legacy, and like you'll be able to say, wow, I was a part of that whole movement, in terms of building out that technology. And that's really where we are right now. You can think of it like this, you could think of it like Steve Jobs in his garage, like I always watch those videos, and you look at a guy like, just the guys around him, and putting all the transistors together, and coming up with the power supply, and all these crazy ideas, right, that were flowing. But, somehow, collectively, they were able to do it, regardless, At the end of the day, they were able to do it. And it's evolved over that time. And obviously, we have Apple computers now. Like, I have an Apple computer. But, I mean, it all started from that garage. It all started from the people who thought differently, right? And a guy like Woz, right beside him, with the genius nature that he had, right? And so you see people in the space right now within the blockchain space very similar. You have a guy like Dan Larimer, and you got a guy like Vitalik, and in their own right, both of them are geniuses, and I gotta respect geniuses. You know what I'm saying? Like, you need visionaries like that. They don't come. It's not like you just have these rain on society all the time. I mean, every, so many decades you have someone like this. And so, it's amazing. But people around you who know nothing about, this technology could use your help. I mean, it's like in the old days when Apple or Microsoft first came out with their operating system. If you study back to when Microsoft OS first came out, I mean, who understood what that would be like? Who understood that there would be like the ability to create thousands of applications on a single computer and enable me to speak with you right now? I mean, all this, if you really start to put it all together, we are at the cusp of an amazing time in our society, just in terms of what is possible about breaking down the barriers and creating a new decentralized, I guess, America, if you will, like a new world, right, in which anybody around the world can help create new systems that free us, and enable us to do what we want versus what we need to do. And I think I've talked about that before, in the sense like, right now, a lot of us, and probably everybody on this channel who's watching these videos, we go to work and we do things, and I mean, it's great. I'm not complaining. Listen, I'm very thankful for what I have, in terms of building neat systems. I mean, I build some cool systems, and I, work on design and review. But, it would be awesome to wake up every day and just think about who I want to help, what I want to do, work with others to help build those systems, and just do it because I want to, not because I have to. And there's a big difference behind that. And there's a big difference in the value or what's being delivered when you give someone that choice, right? And so if you think about games, good games don't force people to do things. If you think about a game, good games give people freedom to choose, right? Do you go left? Do you go right? do you play, do you choose to run this play in the football game, that you're playing? You have the choice to do whatever it is you want to do in that game. You have the choice. And what we're building, guys, is a way to do that in life. We're building a new way to basic architect our game, right? Because right now in our games, I mean, for the most part, most of us, we don't have like choices. We have one play we can run Monday through Friday, and that's it. You run the same play, and you know, just like in a game, just like in a football game or a basketball game, or if you guys have played any sports, you guys can resonate with what I'm saying. But if you've been on a team and you run the same play every day or every game, you know, and even if you get real good at it, it's predictable. What if you had the ability to run different plays? You know, you were the point guard or you were the quarterback, and you called different plays as you saw them instantaneously, you know, to your team. Okay, and you could choose which team any day you could be on. That is the freedom. That is like amazing. Because what we have right now, guys, is we have a system in which we're calling the same play every time. Like we're calling the same basketball play, running the same play, and it's so predictable that it's not even allowing our economy to, you know, scale and grow to what it could be, because it hinders the innovation and the imagination, the creativity that people have. Well, what happens when you break that whole system and you create a new playground, right? A new field where you give people the ability to create their own teams, to run their own plays, and to create their own plays, to share their own plays with each other and say, hey, you know what? I have this idea. Maybe we should, you know, collaborate and do this, or maybe we should build a new field over there. And it may not even be EOS. It may be like something totally different where people come together and they like create their own platform. But I mean, at the same time, the beauty of it is that you or I can decide where it is we want to go. And that's completely different than what we have today. And so that's really what excites me. But what I would say to you guys is, who are watching this channel, is, you know, consider hooking up with me. Consider linking up with, you know, an organization like EOS.io Phoenix. Consider starting something in your community the same way. What would be really awesome to have, even on a weekend basis, is just a get-together where, you know, people all around the world, not BPs necessarily, and I don't have anything against BPs, but I'm just saying, like, people all around the world get together and build games together. Because one thing, here's what I was thinking about, guys. Like, when you go to these websites and you see these airdrops, they're awesome airdrops. And a lot of them are geared towards digital, like, transaction services, like a DEX maybe, or, you know, social networking app. But a lot of those, you know, if we want these to be successful and we want everybody around the world to use them, we're going to need ambassadors all around the world to market and support those products, right? When you're building an app for an entire world, that means we need different, you know, influencers or inputs on the user experience to make that the most remarkable system that we could build, right, against the legacy Vampire Squid systems. We want it to be 100 times better. Well, it's very hard to do that if, like, you know, even if I have a team in Phoenix, for example, with 15 people or 20 people building this DApp, and we build it awesome for people in Phoenix and people maybe in the US, you know, it may not work across the globe. It may only work here. And I mean, we could do that. I mean, that would be an amazing accomplishment to build like an app that's used, like, you know, in one country. But I think what interests me is, how do you build a DApp that will change the world? You know, that's what I go back to. How do we make the killer world DApps? And I think for that, you need different people, different skill sets, different cultures to all come together and like share their input on this. The other thing I was thinking about that might enable this to happen is, I guess if we build the code on the front end, I'm sorry, you build the code on the back end, and then you have APIs, and you could have different interfaces for depending on the region you're in. So that could also work too, but I still think that in some cases the token economics, the way in which things could be designed, we could have a tremendous benefit by the inclusion of people versus just having these smaller teams work on it themselves. Because I've seen on the Ethereum space, at least, that when teams do that, they think they have everything, worked out, but they just, they choose to, they seem to leave the little details out, and the little details are what makes the big things happen, and that's what's going to enable the adoption of this technology. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I mean, what are some of the things that you guys are excited about in this space? I'd love to know if you guys are you have a meetup in your communities. Is anybody here doing any of those things? Like, do you have a weekly meetup to help people that maybe they don't have as much time to study these things? Unfortunately, I know a lot of you guys like crypto fees. I know you do some amazing videos. It's me, Boss Lady. I know you have a lot of knowledge on the space because I see you on a lot of these channels. It'd be awesome to have you, along in the journey and make these videos. One of the things that's really interesting to me is the fact that cryptocurrencies right now are very much centered on particular groups of people around the world. It's a younger crowd. It's mostly male dominated, and I'm not saying that we're going to get there tomorrow, but what would be really cool is seeing different people hold the cryptos. I think that's when we're going to see the user adoption just take off, right? Like when we see people who maybe are even more socially connected. I mean, women and men, but there's just different attributes that each person has. And some people may be more influential than other people. I can make videos all day. I could have, different kinds of backgrounds on my channel. But I may not command the same interests, or people may not even click on this channel, actually. Okay, just inherently, because maybe they don't resonate with, who I am or what I represent. And that's okay. But that's why it's important that we have different people all around the world make these videos so that, if someone resonates with it, it's me, Boss Lady, they can totally get the knowledge they need to succeed and thrive in the crypto ecosystem. They don't need to go to like Wolf Crypto or EOS.io Phoenix to get the information because, maybe they just get annoyed with someone like me, and that's okay. So I would say, I would love to connect with you guys and be a part of that. I'd love to see what you guys are doing and learn. One of the things I was thinking about doing, guys, for those that have meetups, and it looks like Boss Lady says she has tons of meetups, and next one is in Toronto this Thursday, June the 14th. That sounds really cool. I don't know if YouTube allows you to share that meetup link, but I would say, by all means, anytime I'm on here, share that info, because that's the kind of stuff that we need to get out into the communities, get more people involved at the grassroots level. But one of the things I was thinking about doing is developing more of like a community token. Because one of the things I was thinking about is like, how do you get people to like be a part of the community, right? And so I thought about this idea of like working with like maybe like Fuzzy and others. Like how do you create like something that rewards people for coming to meetups? How do you reward someone for participating in a pitch deck? So I don't know if you guys saw it, but I mentioned earlier like EOS Block 1, they gave away, I think it was like 10 grand, or I think it was 100 grand, I think, for the grand prize, or maybe it was like 10 or 100 grand. But I was thinking that, I'm obviously not on Block 1's level, but I can give away some money. So what I started to think about is, what if I just started with a $500, giveaway? Like I create a meetup, I give the rules of the meetup, and then I give the teams, I probably have to give them more, I probably would want to give them more time to do it, just because people work and stuff. But I was thinking like maybe I have a contest where I give the teams, why I set up the rules, and maybe there's 3 weeks to basically put together your slide deck, your demo, your pitch, your video, right? and we put it on YouTube on this channel, EOS.io Phoenix. So the idea would be that we would attract, the universities to come on board just by giving away, EOS, maybe $1,000, $500 worth of EOS, and just keep doing those every month or every other month if we can, and also demonstrate to the community that we're building this, and eventually we could have some useful local incubators all around the world. Not to say that what Block.1 is doing is not good, but I'm just saying like how we even just get people engaged. And so I've been thinking about integrating that with community tokens. That how do you give community tokens value? And so one way is like reputation, but another way is just backing them like inside the tokens with EOS. So by holding the tokens, by holding the community tokens, you'd in fact have some fraction of EOS tokens. And so by doing that reserve inside the token, kind of like the Bancor model, you could basically give your tokens value that people would want, and that would be scarce, right? But also those tokens could represent voting in your meetup community. So if you had to do a vote, those tokens could represent, what direction the community goes in, maybe what, who to reward the pitched to, right? Like who to award in terms of who had the best pitch. So how do you vote on maybe who has the best idea? Well, that could be done through a community token, right? So that could be another use case for holding these tokens is having influence in the community. Another thing could be a ticket to an event. So I've been thinking about this one a lot, just for everybody across the globe, is local meetups that, let's say we want to do something like the Tulip Conference, but done a little bit differently. And I'm not like crapping on the Tulip Conference. I think, listen, it was the first EOS event, and it looked like it was pretty awesome. I mean, they had some great guests there. But one thing that I've been really focused on here in Phoenix is making sure that, like, one thing I don't want is I don't want money to be a hindrance for people to come to our conferences. I'll just say it like that. I don't want money to be the reason why people don't show up to a conference that we would host here in Phoenix. At least in terms of the ticket price, I don't want that to be a hindrance on coming to view any of the content. I don't want it to be a hindrance on understanding any of the tutorials that we're going to host as part of our event. It should all be available. Now, that doesn't mean it's free, and I'm going to explain that. So one of the things I was thinking about doing is, what if you made a two-tier, like a parallel system, okay? There are two ways to get access to events in a community. Okay, one way is you pay for it because you don't want to, or you choose not to participate in the community. And for those people, that's fine. If they want to pay, $250 or $500 to get in an event, or I think even some were like $1,000 or $2,000, like consensus, like ridiculous prices, right? They can do that. The other way to get into the events would be that you show up to the meetups, you participate in the ways you can, whether that's, and each person has their superpower. So maybe we start the meetups by having people identify what their superpower is. And what do I mean by superpower? Well, superpower is, someone who, it's an attribute that people have, right? It's something that they're really good at. So if you're a good speaker, maybe that's your superpower. Maybe you have the ability to connect well with others. And that itself is a huge trait. Maybe you speak a different language than other people in your community. Okay, so if you speak Korean or Chinese or whatever language you speak, that is an asset to have in this space. Because again, it goes back to global applications we're building. If we want to build global applications, we need to have people who have different language skill sets in our community help us either translate the documents or work with people outside of our community to get their feedback on what we're doing. So that is a superpower, and there is tremendous value in using that in the community. Obviously, coders, that speaks for itself. If you're a coder, there's value there. If you contribute to the community, there's no reason why you shouldn't be rewarded, either through tutorials or through demos or whatever it is you're doing, there's value. If you're a marketer, huge value there. Getting the word out in a community, that should be rewarded, right? So putting flyers, doing SEO analysis, getting people onboarded. If you're a human resources person, there's tremendous value in that. So I don't care what place you come from in terms of your background, there's huge value in what we're doing. And if you have no idea what blockchain technology is, there's value in coming to a meetup. Because the reason is, the questions you ask at a meetup, the things you're going to ask are things that other people have questions about. And there's value in that. There's value in how you phrase your questions to people who think or people who should know at this point most things about blockchain, right? And so when talking to people, what I learned is that there's a lot of things I need to master or continue working on to understand blockchain better, because there's questions that I'm being asked sometimes where I'm like, well, I never thought of it that way. Well, that just tells me that, I need to learn that much more. And every day there's something new to learn. But the point is that in those interactions, they're actually improving you. So again, there's value in all kinds of relationships. The most important thing is that you show up to these events. And so to I guess, bring it back to what I was saying originally is, if these communities like the one in Toronto, or the one here in Phoenix, or the one in Las Vegas, like Crypto Fees, or wherever you guys are who are watching this video, if you guys come up with this system, it can do remarkable things for people in the community who may not have any idea about cryptocurrencies, because maybe it's just too intimidating for them to learn on their own. You guys can become those hubs that get people on board. One of the things that we were thinking of doing here is like a physical token where people would actually have in their hands an actual card or some kind of a coin that they could go home with. And so that would give them sort of like an identity in the tribe, if you will, a tribe in Phoenix. And that token could be used to give them access to certain like events. So, for example, and here's an example of how it would be done. We throw a huge event in Phoenix, or maybe we work with other communities, 3 or 4 communities, or hopefully hundreds of communities across the world, to put together an event, sort of like Tulip Conference, okay? Now, some of us, maybe, even like myself, I would be happy to contribute to the event with no expectation for maybe even receiving anything back, okay? And I'm sure there may be other people like that. So what we do is we put together the event. We leverage the content that was developed in the EOS.io local communities. So we start to develop scaffolding, if you will, right, on how we develop dApps. We start to develop tutorials on the do's and don'ts of your wallets, right? We develop maybe a skit, just funny things. We may develop how to best do your pitch decks, right, to VCs and your community. These are all little ideas that could be refined through our communities. And as they're refined, right, we get better at them. And eventually, we determine as a community, as an entire community, that we're ready to basically share this with other people. Maybe people, beyond the typical that may attend our meetup groups. And then we're able to, monetize all the work that went into doing that, right, between our communities. And so the people in the community, there's no reason why, anybody who's attended or who had an interest in this should not have access to that information, because they were a part of it. And in fact, they contributed to it. And they may not have all the mastery down, but they helped in most of the meetups, or maybe they helped in a portion of the meetups. So maybe you establish that, if the person attended so many meetups of these types, they have access. They basically have a key into your event. And for those that choose not to, because for whatever reason, and there's all kinds of reasons and excuses, but the point is, if they choose not to, but they still want to participate, they still want to have access to the valuable information, then, they have a choice to pay. And for institutions and bankers and all these people who just, frankly, they, right now, most of them are thinking still in the old way of doing things, which is to make money and invest in EOS and the companies or future projects that are going to be built on it, or other platforms. It doesn't even have to be EOS. But if you were doing this in your community, what you could do is you could just charge a bunch of money to those people, because they're not value creators. They're value extractors. And so there's a exchange in value for giving away your content. You don't just give it away for free. So that's the idea I was thinking of, guys. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about that. And maybe tying it to an actual community token to track the accountability of people, right? So if someone says, for example, even if I say I'm going to do something in my local community and I don't do it, then, it should be a hit to my reputation. If I say I'm going to be somewhere and I do it, there should be a reward or some kind of a, impact on my reputation because I did what I said I was going to do. And if you get back to the fundamentals of what human behavior is, an integral part of that is about, a big part of that is accountability, having the ability to be accountable to other people. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about all this. Shout out to Crypto Fees and It's Me, Boss Lady, for tuning in on this one. You guys are very influential people in the space, so I encourage you again, guys, to consider helping your local communities. I know price is an awesome thing, and we all like to see prices improve on EOS. But a big part of this is also just the people around you and loving them and sharing with them your knowledge. Not being greedy. Don't keep that knowledge inside. Share it with other people. Help grow apps, and let's make the world a better place. And we can work together on it. We can work in a decentralized manner, and just really, make a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs said. So I hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday. Thanks for tuning in to this channel, and peace, y'all. See you guys next week.